where we have missing coordination, and not that there aren't resources, but I think again it goes back to that alignment and that coordination of care, is really with the folks that we have that are experiencing either are seriously mentally ill or experiencing some mental health issues. I think that's one of the gaps that I see a lot in our system, just because we have folks on campus that are able to respond effectively to those issues, but not enough.
There's two groups that I always feel like fall through, and that is undocumented community. In the past, CAS would receive people without documents, allow them the opportunity just like everyone else. At some point in the new year, they changed that policy, and so a lot of folks out there were going to Men's Overflow trying to look for somewhere to stay. When I had asked why that they were being denied relief, they were saying, well, in 3 months, we got to get them stabilized. We got to get them into housing. We got to get them into work. How are we going to provide them that opportunity?
We had, and this is how ridiculous it sometimes becomes, is that we had a client here when I first started back here about 4 years ago, that was over at Cass, and they realized how old she was. And so she would come in here with us, but she had Down syndrome. And her mother had died. She had been living with her father. She didn't know if she had been born in Mexico or here. She had no clue. I mean, how many of us could tell unless your parent says to you, you were born here, I remember at a certain age having to go to my parents and say, where was I born? It's not just something, And so it was very difficult because a lot of agencies would deny services to her because we couldn't find out if she was legally here or not legally here. And to me, that's ridiculous. It was obvious this was a young woman with Down syndrome, and some agencies just couldn't touch her because she didn't have that ID.
The other group of folks that are always falling through the cracks, I would say, are the transgender community. And I feel like a lot of providers understand what gay and lesbian, bisexual identities are, but people are so unaware of what transgender identities are and what type of pronouns they respect, and the challenges that they face. I have about 5 youth who are transgender, and a lot of them were displaced from their families. They were angry with themselves because they wanted to be the person they truly feel they are inside. They were denied medical support around hormones and testosterone, and it then evolved into a drug addiction where they were coping with being kicked out, being unacceptable, not being hired by an employer because of their transgender ways. And so that was definitely an intersection where I feel like social service providers don't even know.
If you look at a place like the campus, right, it makes a lot of sense because we have a high concentration of people who are experiencing homelessness in this community. And so it really does make sense to have this sort of co-location of services and these really condensed service areas. But in your rural areas, you might have 20 people experiencing homelessness in Yavapai County, and then 30 people in St. John's, right, and one agency that's an hour away from both of those places, right? So how does someone with limited resources get to access those resources that are available? And again, they're very limited in the 13 counties that make up the balance of our state.
And youth, nobody wants to work with. Well, let's talk about the vets. We'll go help them. Nobody really wants to help the youth. They're able bodies. That's what a lot of people say. You go get a job. You're young. You can do it. Well, you choose to sit out here and be homeless. But again, they don't think about all those contributing factors: addiction, mental health, displacement, trauma, super traumatized youth. And then what that ends up being is criminalized youth who are in the system, who stay in the system. Some of the youth who've always been in the system, from foster care to Grand Canyon Academy to probation to violation to back in and out, in and out, in and out. Why get a job? Why? I already got warrants out for my arrest. As a social service provider, my resources are limited. Creativity plays a big part of my job. There isn't enough places to put people. There isn't enough social services available that aren't charging you, that don't require this or that. So, my main thing when it comes to the oppression around criminalization is provide that resource, provide that social service, provide that rehabilitation. Without those agencies existing, people will continue to be criminals in society. They need rehabilitation. Being incarcerated isn't a rehabilitation center. We need more out here. I only can have a few I'm gonna refer people to, and it's hard. It's hard turning people away because there isn't enough resources.